Welcome to the AccessTruth Podcast, exploring challenging issues currently impacting missions in a rapidly changing world. The AccessTruth Podcast with Paul Mack.
Well, we're really glad today to be talking with Brendan and Shannon Petersen. So welcome, guys, to our podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Thanks for having us.
Well, we've met briefly, I think, maybe at a cross-cultural workshop in Sydney. We haven't had a chance to spend a lot of time together, but keen to hear a little more about you guys. And I know that the people who listen to this and watch the interview will be as well. So, yeah, I'd love to hear your story. I know that these are the facts I know. You're Aussies, you're Australians. I think you've both got medical training. You're both GPs, is that correct? Or
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. You have one child, I believe. Is that correct? Two. Okay. There I'm behind.
July.
Yeah, we just had a son recently.
Oh, cool. So daughter and son, is that right?
All right.
Yeah. So we've got Willow, who's
Okay.
just over 2, and Josiah, who's now 5 months.
Nice. Excellent. I know that you guys are on a track to move to Southeast Africa to work there. And I know that you're on a training track of some kind. You're equipping yourselves, or God's equipping you for that role and has had you on a journey. So those are the facts I know. But on AccessTruth, we believe in the power of story. So come on, guys, tell us your story a little bit.
So as you mentioned, we're married. We've got 2 kids, both doctors working here in Sydney as GPs currently. Shan's done some additional training in obstetrics and gynecology and has a passion for women's health. And we also both have a heart for community health, and in particular, a program or method called community health evangelism, which we've done some training and visited projects around the world in that. And yes, as you've mentioned, we're heading, God willing, heading to Madagascar next year, 2021, to join a mainly medical project. It was established with a church planting and evangelism goal, but through medical means. So we'll be joining a team of Malagasy and international workers there.
Great. Well, yeah, Shannon, what's a nice girl from Sydney going to Madagascar? What's that?
Long-term cross-cultural medical work has been something that I've wanted to do since I was very young, probably 11 or 12. Yeah. I had a dream to be a doctor, and particularly to deliver babies in Africa. It was like a real dream I've held for a long time. So I think, as I wasn't a Christian at the time, but I became a Christian in my later teen years, and I think, learning of the Great Commission and then my heart, to do for medical work in less well-off areas, that kind of really long-term mission became just such that, the obvious choice, and something that, I wanted to pursue for as long as I can remember, really. Yeah.
So for you guys, is that the same for you as well, Brendan? I mean, it wasn't like you were kind of got into medicine to carve out a career and all the normal things. Were you guys always more or less, this was part of the plan all the way along, or how did that come about?
Not for me. So I came from a Catholic upbringing and respected a lot of the values of that belief system, but probably by the time I got to university was a bit over the religion, and so I would have probably described myself as agnostic or atheistic. Through, I guess, a series of life events in university, and in fact the witness of Shan in the end, came to discover a relationship with Jesus in my second last year of university. So for going into medicine, my plan was have a nice career here, earn lots of money, have a nice house and comfort, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was kind of flipped on its head. And then Shan was, we were both studying medicine at the same time, and obviously Shan had her calling to long-term cross-cultural medical work. And then it was basically up to me to see if that would be something that I was also passionate about. And that's actually what led us to Madagascar for the first time. So our church was sending a short-term team, and we took that opportunity and fell in love.
Yeah, I was talking with somebody else, Max Stiles, on a previous interview, and he was telling about, they were headed to the Middle East, and then 9/11 happened, and he started to, kind of get a little shaky in his conviction about it. And then his wife's like, no, we're going to go. So, yeah, I know what it's like to have a wife who's, man, they're just troublemaking, aren't they, Brendan? They have these visions for the Great Commission. And no, that's great. I love it. Yeah, my wife has that role with me too. So, I love seeing ladies who are committed to these things and encourage us on, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so pretty normal upbringing. You both grew up in Sydney, did you then, in Australia?
We both grew up in Sydney, but neither of us were really from Christian homes, I'd say. No, we weren't really, and sort of came to Christ like a little bit later on, I guess. But yeah, I'd say pretty typical upbringing. Nothing too unusual, really. Yeah.
Okay, and then so Madagascar, the desire to go to Madagascar came first, or you went on a short-term trip there, and then God drew your hearts to that place, to that island?
Yeah, I think it was always just Africa in general for us, somewhere. And we probably thought it was going to be more Eastern Africa. That was probably where mainland Eastern Africa was sort of what we had in mind. Not particularly a God thing. I think it's just what we envisaged for some reason.
Probably more from the medical statistics at that early stage.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. I think, it's one thing that we felt we did have a conviction from God to go. We felt called certainly to Africa, but at the same time, I guess we also want to be maximally useful. I guess that's a desire that we had. So in a sense, the countries that had the worst medical statistics were attractive to us, I guess, to feel like we would be maximally useful. But
Yeah, the opportunity in Madagascar, we only ever thought would be a short-term thing, sort of to see if long-term cross-cultural work was something that I also had a passion and calling for. But we continued to return to Madagascar on short-term trips over sort of 5 or 6 year period. And I think in that time, God just really grew our heart for the people. But also grew our hearts and opened our eyes on not just the medical needs, but on the spiritual needs as well.
I want to talk a little bit more about community health evangelism and all of that. But tell us a little about Madagascar. We've personally been to Mozambique, which is it's off the coast of Mozambique, but I mean, we all know about lemurs, right? Madagascar, is that right? But apart from that, I think a lot of people don't know that much about it. So just a little brief description.
I think I really feel the movie Madagascar has done a disservice to the nation of Madagascar in misrepresentation. But we do get asked commonly about King Julian and lemurs. But it's a large island nation. It's the 4th largest island in the world. It has a population of 25 million, so very similar to Australia.
Oh, right.
And it does have rich biodiversity. It does have lemurs and, really unique, I guess, flora and fauna. But I guess it is also an incredibly poor nation as well. For the past many years, it's been in the top 10 poorest nations in the world. And there was a political coup in 2009 that unfortunately just did a lot of damage to the nation and led to a lot of aid being withdrawn and just exacerbated the poverty that already exists there. But yeah, it's beautiful. It's just a lot of the terrain reminds us a lot of kind of more central Australia, a lot of red dirt, and yeah, it's really beautiful. And the people are beautiful, generous and conversational and community orientated.
But also, very unique.
Yeah.
Different people groups amongst the country, more on the coast, will appear more African.
Yeah.
But going back through the years, I think the original inhabitants actually came over from Indonesia and from parts of Southeast Asia. Yeah. So physically and culturally, it's a fascinating mix of Africa and Asia.
Yeah. And I want to talk a little about how you've been equipped in the process, but projecting ahead. So you will go to the capital, whose name I should know, but I don't. Yeah.
So the capital is Antananarivo, or no, it's known as Tana. This is a bit easier.
Right.
But we will be there for a short time, just sort of getting established. But we will be making our way to a smaller town, Mandratsara, in the mid-north of Madagascar.
Wow. Have you been there before? Have you been to that particular place?
We spent 48 hours there last year.
Yeah.
Shan was sick the whole time.
I thought I might die there, but it was an enjoyable trip nonetheless.
And we decided to go back long term. So.
Yeah. So, what kind of setting will you be working in there? Is it a small hospital, clinic? What will it be like?
There's a hospital there that's run by the Baptist Church in Madagascar, and it's we call, I guess, medium size. The town itself isn't too big, but it serves quite a large radius and large population. Like probably the only surgical centre within like 8 or 10 hours commute. So it's not huge in size, but services a large area. Some of our work will be in the hospital, and then linked with the hospital, there are a few other projects and opportunities, and I guess the community health team is one that we're particularly excited about.
Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit more. I know that you're somehow going with, and I don't know exactly what your relationship will be with global community health evangelism, so CHE network. How do you fit into that? Explain that to us.
So we did a training in community health evangelism in 2018. And prior to that, we had read about it and we'd visited a few community health evangelism projects in Africa and also a large one in India. And we just loved it. We just thought it's just the best model for sharing the gospel, evangelism and discipleship and church planting, but also health education and truly making an impact on the health statistics and empowerment of communities. So we just loved it. And every time we read more or saw another project, we just got even more passionate about it. So we knew wherever we were to end up, we wanted at least the opportunity to do community health evangelism. And the hospital in Mandratsara already had a thriving community health evangelism project, which we hadn't known about until we visited. So that was incredibly encouraging. And one of the key reasons that we decided in the end that was going to be the right fit for us as a family.
So, I kind of understand the words of community health and being involved in bringing value to people's lives in practical ways. How does the evangelism and by extension even church planning work? Like, do you guys have a picture of how your involvement will be in that? Obviously you're going as medical practitioners, but how does the other parts of that, I don't want to create a dichotomy as though there's something separate, but how does it all work together?
Yeah, I mean, I guess they are distinct roles, the doctor in the hospital and the worker in the community health team. And most likely we will have as little of a role face-to-face in engaging the communities with that health and gospel good news, basically. So we hope to be, helping more with the overseeing and just providing guidance and input on that, particularly because we go in with some cultural understanding of short-term trips, but still a lot to learn, and particularly not knowing the language of that people group. So initially it's going to be a limited role that will hopefully increase over time, but mainly just advising and guiding.
Great.
We'll be right back in just a moment. But first, here's a resource from AccessTruth.
I remember the early days when I first started at church. We did very little as far as reaching the rest of the world.
The missionary is a person who is supported by sending a check.
We look around the world and minimally we see thousands of what we would describe as unreached language or unreached people groups yet remaining.
So what is the challenge of global evangelism today in global missions?
The Great Commission was not given to individuals. It wasn't given to nonprofits. It was given to the church.
When we undertake something that we think is very important, we're going to take time to plan, to strategize. We're going to count the cost.
Going into areas that have never heard the gospel before with language learning and culture learning and being able to interact with cultures that have just been completely away from God for centuries.
Because discipleship isn't just making a disciple, it's making a disciple that can make another disciple.
We also need to understand that there is a pattern that we see in Scripture that actually God has laid out for us to explain us how this should happen, that we actually need to understand how God describes this pattern to us and follow what God has actually given to us as a model. Not just coming up with some great ideas on our own, but actually realizing there's a master plan that's been laid out for us.
Jesus told his disciples to go and make disciples of all nations. But how would a group so small complete a task so great? The book of Acts recalls the story of how God was at work through the early church to begin this mission. But the story hasn't finished yet. Join us as we go on a journey through the book of Acts. We'll be hearing from experienced field workers, pastors, practitioners, and follow a team through Southeast Asia to reflect on the lessons that we can learn to see what part we can play as the message of Jesus continues going global.
And now, back to the AccessTruth Podcast with Paul Mack.
And language, you mentioned language. What's the language of wider communication? Is it Portuguese in Madagascar?
So, officially the national language of Madagascar is French. It has been a French colony previously.
I knew that.
Yeah, I bet. A lot of things, some things function in French, essentially universities, hospitals, government, all functions in French. But in reality, most of the people of Madagascar don't speak French. So it would only be those who kind of see through high school education or tertiary education who have French, and most communicate in Malagasy, and of which there's a few different dialects, but there's sort of a common Malagasy language.
Yeah. Will you have opportunity? Are you going to get a chance to learn Malagasy, or are you going to be just totally thrown in the deep end in the medical work?
No, we will have opportunity to learn Malagasy. I guess we feel there's a tension between the hospital functions in French, and so that's the language that we're learning at the moment.
Okay.
To reach a level of proficiency to be able to function in the hospital environment. And that's kind of a requirement before we can go. And then when we go, there will be a period of time when we're learning Malagasy or the Simieti dialect of that. But probably that will be an ongoing thing alongside our work in the hospital.
so obviously you guys did medical training, university, and all that's involved in that. What other training have you done or are you involved in that's preparing you for this this adventure, your ministry there?
Yeah, so there's been our medical training, and we've kind of wrestled with how much or how little of that do we do before you go. So we've trained both as doctors and now as GPs, and then Shan's done additional training in obstetrics, and we've both done the training in community health evalualism. But I guess over the time we've felt an increasing burden on the spiritual need. And so, we wanted to pursue additional gospel and cultural training. And so currently we're both participating in what's called the Connect program, which I guess falls under the AccessTruth banner, which is it's kind of user-led in terms of how long it takes you. But it's a very interactive, I guess it covers a lot of different topics for cross-cultural ministry.
Yeah, okay. And just if you could describe a little more of that. So that's, and I, cards on the table, I know a little bit about the Connect program because, as you say, there's a good relationship between AccessTruth. They actually, how it works is the Connect program here in Australia, which is a non-residential program, right? And church-based, but uses the AccessTruth curriculum. So you guys have been going through some of that, and then relating to someone online, right? Or in person as well at times.
Yeah. So it's working through modules there online, and then with quarterly face-to-face workshops as well, that can involve speakers from Australia, internationally, providing the unique input and experience on a range of topics. So recently we were looking at sort of assessing church maturity. So when you're looking at churches that have been planted, how do you assess their maturity? Other workshops have looked at language acquisition, cultural acquisition. So a wide range of topics, but really, really practical and relevant, and stuff that we're so grateful that we're getting now, because all of our medical training isn't going to prepare us for the transition and those kind of adjustments.
Yeah, good. And I mean, you have a church or a number of churches who are behind you and part of this whole venture, I imagine, right? In Sydney and beyond.
We have Ascending Church, and
which is our home church,
and has been our home church for me for about 15 years. Since we both became a Christian at the church we're currently at. So it's really special, and it's been a really encouraging journey. I guess a unique aspect to that is our church has never sent a missionary before, and hasn't really had too much involvement with missionaries or cross-cultural work in the past. So it's a very new, it's new for everyone, I guess. So we're sort of navigating that together and working out what that looks like. But overall, it's been really encouraging and enjoyable so far.
Yeah.
And who's actually sending you guys out? Are you joining an agency, or is it just with the network in Madagascar?
I guess we'll be sent by our local church and supported by Pioneers of Australia, a mission and mobilisation agency, who are helping to equip and support us, but also help equip and support our local church as they undertake this big change for them as well. So
I was thinking it's pretty cool, isn't it? Because your participants in this training program, the Connect program, using materials that the AccessTruth team has put together, but sent out by your local church with the help of an agency of Pioneers Australia, joining a network and a team in Madagascar. I mean, that's how it should be, right? Like, that's pretty cool, I think.
Yeah, it's been a really encouraging journey for us to see all these, different elements of the church and the body of Christ come together, and I think enrich one another along the way. Certainly that's been the experience for our local church, and their involvement in Madagascar has enriched the church here, and the resources from the Connect program and AccessTruth are equipping and enabling our local church and us as well. So it's been a really encouraging and just great experience for us.
So you're going to have two, like, God willing, next year you head over to Madagascar. Hopefully, COVID, everything starts to settle down. You head over, but you're taking two very young children. Is that how do you feel about that? Is that a challenge? Is that exciting to be taking them on an adventure? I mean, how would you guys reflect on that side of it? Maybe Shannon.
I think the first thing to say is that because this has always been our plan well before we had children, I think that makes it a little bit easier for us. The decision was made, and I think we had peace before we had kids that if God's called us, He's called them. He knows. And I think we rest in that a lot, especially when we do have worries. But I think, someone said to me the other day at a family Christmas event, and I hear this a lot, you're so brave to take kids to somewhere like Madagascar. And I don't know, I answer in different ways, but this time I felt prepared and I said, I think you were brave to raise kids in Sydney. Because, and I think for me, I think it's a privilege that for us and our kids that they will be raised in a place where they are a minority race, where they're exposed to, real life issues like poverty and inequity in a way that they just wouldn't here. The fact that they'll get to witness, God at work in a really tangible, practical way. And, I'm excited for that. Certainly, we do have worries about education or health or things like that. But I think at the end of the day, we feel real peace that, God knows that and that He has called them as well, and that He's graced them to be raised overseas, and that He will continue to do that. And
that's great. I mean, can speak from personal experience that we only had one child, one daughter, but it can be a wonderful adventure if you go into it the way it sounds like you guys are looking at it. A great way to live and a really rich life to experience so many things together. So that's great. So, I mean, have you had opportunities, based on what your plans are, to chat with other young couples? Are you finding interest? Does that raise, interest for people? Are they talking to you while you're doing this and so on?
Yeah, we've been, I guess because of COVID, it's been an interesting time to be journeying a lot of this. And I think for some people, it's kind of felt like it's come out of the blue. And we've been starting to share what our plans are for next year. I guess some people, knowing us well, have known it's a long coming plan. But it's been interesting to see the reactions of people. Most people, very encouraging of it. I guess we've got different networks. We've got our medical friends, and then we've got our sort of more our Christian networks, and a little bit of overlap there. But a wide range of responses. Yeah,
I mean, on the professional side, are they like, are you crazy to leave, a career in Sydney for that? Like, or do they appreciate what you're doing on some level?
I think people respect the decision and they think it's an admirable thing to do. But I do feel often there's and they might not say it out loud, but the sense of wow, you're sacrificing a lot of financial security that you could have here. Yeah. But I think people know not to vocalize that. I don't know. I think there's that tension. Well, I want to support because you're doing a good thing, and I don't want to look like I think money's more important than that. I feel it's often unspoken, but yeah, I think a lot of people are shocked, like when I've shared with colleagues who the concept of missionary is very foreign to them, the fact that we won't get paid and won't get superannuation really is like, they can't. It's shocking. But most people, I think, are really on board, very supportive and encouraging. Yeah,
there's certainly, would you agree, a lot of pressure. I was talking with, actually, again, on this series of interviews with Naomi Reed. She's written a lot of books. Maybe you've read some of them, but they were both, I think they're both trained in physiotherapy, her and her husband, but that kind of pressure from our society, especially for professional people, like, and a lot of pressure on even Christian couples, families, to do the right thing, like the safe thing, the secure thing. And what you're doing challenges that, right? It does.
Yeah. And I hope they find that interesting and a bit countercultural, and that can lead to some good conversation and questions. And, for them,
exactly.
I love to share what we're doing for people to hopefully really look at their own life and think, okay, what am I doing for Christ? How does it look? What does it look like for me to be missional in my circumstances, or countercultural and different in my circumstances?
Yeah, that's great. We need to do that, don't we? Like, fit in and just be real people, but at the same time allow our lives to be a challenge as Christ lives them out. Well, yeah, great, guys. Well, really enjoy getting to know you a little bit more. It's a funny way to do it when we don't really live all that far apart, but really enjoyed the conversation, and I'm sure that those who listen in will really enjoy it as well, and be challenged by it, be challenged by your lives. So, yeah, great. And thank you very much for taking the time with us.
No, thank you, Paul. We really appreciate the opportunity.
Okay.
It's been fun to chat.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.